Nerds International proudly presents.
We want to take you on a quest for knowledge. One that will take us from ancient medieval fantasy across the far reaches of space to the distant future. To many savage worlds.
Oh man, I miss the good old days when I never got it on me. Did I ever tell you about the time that I got it in my mouth? All right, welcome to the Wild Eye Podcast, episode 57. This is a podcast dedicated to Pinnacle Entertainment's Savage Worlds, aimed at beginners and veterans alike. What's going on, gentlemen? Long time no see. I was out camping last time and I missed the whatever the last show was that you did, although I did listen to it. I just don't remember what it's about right now. I feel bad all of a sudden.
It was a review, but yeah, it's good to have you back, Gary. We were
Codex.
hoping Harrison would be here too, but no.
Harrison's playing with his mom.
Taking his mom out for lunch, and yep, that's what happens.
How you doing, Paris? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, Gary. Yourself?
Ah, fantastic. Things are well on the Down Under. You guys are both looking svelte. Eric, you just need to catch up on the beard program.
Beer or beard?
Beard with a D. Beard.
Why? No, I don't like long beards.
They're handy.
No, they're just itchy. I don't like them.
Sweet.
Anyway.
So what are we doing today? What's the haps? What are we doing on 57?
We received a bunch of feedback about the dramatic cake episode. The controversial dramatic cake episode. Probably the most hilarious episode we've ever recorded. And the one that probably spells the doom for Manuel. That was to drop that. Yeah. So, yeah, we said goodbye to Manuel last episode. The review, Codex and Furnace review, but we're just going to go back to the dramatic cake where, yeah, we got some feedback first from the digital dungeon master, David.
Mabrosif.
So he says, dramatic tasks are great in Savage Worlds. I do see where it does not make sense to some folks, but remember, Savage Worlds talks about some of the rules being abstract. I usually never do 5 rounds for a dramatic task. For me, it all depends on the event and scene itself. I also compare dramatic tasks from Savage Worlds to skill challenges from D&D 4E. I also incorporate other skills being involved to let the players use the areas in their skills where they excel and can be successful, but yet still keep the players on the edge of their seats. I recommend any Savage Worlds GM to read about the 4E skill challenges in 4E Essentials Dungeon Master book. That's a good point because, well, when I started playing Savage Worlds, I was just coming out of D&D 4E myself, and I think like 4 years later is when the Savage Worlds Deluxe came out, and that's when the dramatic tasks were introduced, and that's where I went to mentally. When I saw the dramatic task, I'm like, that's basically a skill challenge, but just not dumbed down, but a lot simpler. I could see the influence in there, so that's a good point.
How can a rule be abstract? This is like, and I read it, and then I thought about what he said, and I thought about the rule book, and I think this is where I sometimes have the hiccups with Savage Worlds. Is, to me, rules are supposed to be rules. Rules aren't supposed to be abstract. Art can be abstract. We can be abstract at the table, but isn't a rule supposed to be like bang on, this is it?
Well, that's a good point, but I mean, look at the chases. The chases, I mean, it's an abstract representation of something that's happening. It's that you don't keep track of every little element of it in dramatic tasks. It's a bit like that. A lot of the rules in Savage Worlds are abstract like that. I understand what you're saying, but it's just made so that it's generic enough to accommodate different types of situations.
Okay, cool. That could be another podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's to strike the balance between, a lot of details and a lot of rules and something a bit more loose, right? Maybe if he had said the rules are a bit more loose than in other games, it would make more sense.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a shot at the Digital Dungeon Master. That's something that I've struggled with coming from other systems. It's just where rules are sort of laying down the law. Savage World is, woohoo, we'll put a trapping on this. It's all good. Moving on, kind of situation.
Better not be a shot at the Digital Dungeon Master, or this would be the shortest lived new host to the Wild Die podcast ever. I think that's what he meant. That's what I took it to. Abstract being like loose is what I was, the way that I assumed he meant it. If not, we'll find out, because I'm sure he'll write us back, or I'll talk to him before then, and he'll yell at me and tell me that you're a jerk.
Yeah. And also he says, of all the dramatic tasks, Gary, you have everyone bake a fucking cake. Holy shit. I sensed an ETU theme there also. I had a bad dream about this, and your dramatic task woke me up, and now I'm telling you about it. Lol. See what you did to the poor guy?
Now I feel bad a little bit, but the problem is really who has a bad dream about cake? I don't know anybody. Right? It was probably a good dream. I was probably popping out of the top of it, shirtless, greased up, had a bag of nut butter, right? Paris.
And I'm out.
And it was angel food cake too.
Absolutely.
So
Like Gary had wings.
I was covered in whipped cream and white sauce, and I think that's what you put on it. What is it? It's whipped cream, isn't it? Icing's too sweet.
All right.
Anyways, yeah.
You want to take us to Rob? What he wrote, Gary?
Let's see. Rob Tal says, great show, guys. I almost always tweak dramatic tasks so that a single roll can only net a maximum of 2 successes. What a jerk. Failure is no successes, success is 1 success, and a razor hire is 2 successes. This helps stick to the narratives. I hate it when a scene goes out as only a single roll. It's very flat and boring. We also create a lot of variety rules for specific situations. The way Paris was proposing it, I see how it is just as ideal, and just tweak it and like Eric was saying, where you have multiple tasks that need completed, each with a different skill. Man, I'm having issues reading today. I'm sorry, I went to the Evelyn Wood Sped Read in school.
No, I mean, I guess the way Rob explains it, the way he does it, sort of would solve the problem that we have with the dramatic task ending, in the first round or second round, where there's nothing dramatic about it. If you limit the number of successes that you can get from a roll, that gives it more lasting power. So that's a good way to do it. And yeah, like he says, the rest of it is pretty much some things that we had mentioned, where variety with the skills and that type of thing. So yeah, I'm not sure if I would do it and put a limit, because then it robs the characters, the players, of the success in one round, which is great for them. It's not great for the narrative, I think, but it's great for them to say, hey, woohoo, we disarmed that bomb in one round.
Mm-hmm. You do you, Rob. That's the moral of the story. I was listening to the GM's hangout,
I like
and they
what
were.
Rob did there.
Yeah. Nobody's asking you, Paris. Just quiet down. I was listening to the GM's hangout there a little while ago. They were talking about dramatic tasks and whether or not you succeed on the first round or second round. They were saying something about it goes 5 rounds no matter what, and even if a club comes up, you still hammer them with whatchamacallit. I was going to ask you about that, Eric, and I forgot.
Okay, so you mean like even if you got your 5 successes in one round, you still go on, and then if there's a club and you fail with the club, then it doesn't really succeed? Is that what you're saying?
I think I remember that's what they were saying. Not that it doesn't succeed, but they were saying that you still take it the full 5 rounds in case a club comes up, and then you can hammer them with a complication of some kind.
So you wait after the 5 rounds to announce that it was successful, kind of.
Yeah.
Like you don't end it. Well, yeah, that's interesting.
I'll ask David Scott, and we'll touch it up for next time to make sure that we're on the same page. This is the rules maven. He knows these things. If you have a question, that's the guy.
So wait, just because I haven't heard that episode, but just to clear it up, or to maybe extrapolate on that. So instead of having 5 successes, maybe you have 5 rounds that you have to get through, but depending on how many successes you get, that then changes the narrative. Is that what you're saying?
Well, this is just me speaking out of my butt, because I listened to them talk about it. It's in one of the last 2 episodes. Regardless of whether or not you get all of your successes the first round, you still go all 5 rounds, because there's always a chance that a joker comes up. But then that's as far as I remember. Or sorry, the club. Yeah. And then I don't remember what happens what they said that happens if the club comes up. So I'm going to have to go back and re-listen to make sure that that's why I don't want to speak for them. So I'll ask David Scott about it.
Maybe not at twice the speed this time, so you can actually remember.
I hate you.
I wonder if that's one way you could make dramatic tasks more interesting is instead of having a set limit of 5 required to succeed, you go the 5 rounds, you generate how many failures and successes, and then that creates the next part of the narrative. Or so if you get 10 successes, then something really cool happens. But if you only just get the 5 and you scrape through, would that change?
I mean, there's something similar to that in the new edition of Beasts and Barbarians, because they use the dramatic task for crafting, and basically if you get 3 successes, you craft the item, but it's not like the best quality. And if you get 5 successes, then you can add more abilities or qualities to what you crafted. So that's one way of looking at it too. You could do 1, 3, and 5, or even have something different happen for 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or even beyond 5 if you wanted to. So that's where, the rules being loose, you can adapt them, I think.
Abstract, I think, the word you're looking for.
Yeah, abstract, but we decided to use loose instead. But yeah, as long as there's no taint, right?
That's it. You don't want taint.
Could you extrapolate on that?
What, on your taint?
Well, yeah. All right.
All right. Yeah, you want to read Andy Hall's comment?
Me? Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
considering it
Andy
pertains
Hall.
to you.
Andy Hall says, Paris's questions were spot on. I don't need to read any more. I especially like the question about player agency with regards to dramatic tasks. Rules as written, dramatic tasks seem to offer limited agency with regards to the acting character, so maybe we should try to present dramatic tasks more as problems and allow the players to consider other likely solutions rather than just the obvious one. The GM has to yes and. According to Clint, but not in rules as written as far as I can read, characters that are assisting in a dramatic task suffer the same difficulty modifier as the acting character. He gives a web address there, which I'm assuming you'll put as part of the podcast, notes. I've been looking for discussion of dramatic tasks that go beyond just the mechanics, and this episode did quite a bit of that. Kudos on that. And,
yeah.
Oh, you've saved a whole bunch for a future episode, I see there, Eric.
Yeah, the thing is, it was quite a long email that he sent us, which is good. And basically what he'd like from us is to do a sequel to this topic. And I have a bunch of examples and run through them, give ideas for complications and how these could be solved. So, that's good. Yeah, I think we'll do that. And this time we won't ask Gary to come up with any because not helpful.
I don't know. He came up with good complication at the start of the show, like when he felt something cold in his nose.
No, let's not go there. And regarding the part where he says, according to Clint, the characters assisting get the penalty as well. Well, actually, that was Manuel that said that, and he caught it after the show, so we were going to mention it. And I think maybe that's why he left, because he couldn't face coming on the show and saying that he was wrong, you know? He couldn't admit it.
The humiliation is too much to bear.
I'm leaving. So yeah, that's true. If you're assisting, if it's -2 to the action or -4 with a club, the ones assisting still get that penalty. So keep that in mind. And then Carlin also sent something. He sent some really good examples of the dramatic task, but again, another very long email that it's too early to read right now. So we're just going to use that, excuse me, for the next episode where we'll talk about the dramatic task again, more examples. And then, so John Steve, well, that was freaking hilarious. And I learned the ingredients to angel food cake as a bonus. I tried to imagine how Gary came up with the cake baking scenario. No. Anyways, as written, dramatic tasks are hit or miss with exploding dice. So yeah, we got quite a few of these feedback.
Frickin' hilarious. Just saying.
It was. That's about all it was, though. It wasn't really helpful.
I'll fill John Steve in when we do the XCOM. I've been playing in XCOM with him on Fantasy Grounds, and it's so bloody amazing. I love it so much. It's so cool. So many neat things happen. Oh man, XCOM. He's doing like a 3-part kind of a deal. So we started off doing something out here in BC, where I live, in a little town called Princeton, which was pretty cool. We blasted some aliens. There were so many aliens to blast. It was insane. And then the second one was in like an ice cave somewhere. Actually, it's on a real island out near England somewhere, I think, or Iceland or something. That was super cool. So we went into this ice fortress and stuff and blew up aliens in there, which was friggin' awesome. So the third one's coming up pretty soon, so I'll be there. I'm looking forward to that. It's so fun. He does such a good job with it, man. He's got all these sound effects and stuff. When you press your button to like shoot something, like sound effects pop up, like bam, 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 you firing your guns and whatnot. And he's got great maps. Yeah, he really puts like a lot of effort into it. Way more than like Eric does.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Is this Savage XCOM?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. And Manuel, if you're listening, get on the bloody Savage XCOM. I saw some of the stuff that Manuel did for Savage XCOM. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that here, but it looked good. I'm super stoked for that too. Much more than I am for Savage Shadowrun, Savage XCOM. Know what I'm saying, boys?
Mm-hmm. All right, and Sean Richer, he says, I think it does a good job of showing how not to run dramatic tasks.
What?
Yeah, that was Sean. And one more question for all of you. Can someone still contribute if shaken? Or what if the person who owns the task gets shaken?
Really? You're going to roll in here, insult my skill as a dramatic task artist, and then ask a question from me? I don't think so, mister.
Well, the answer to that question, I know I answered it directly to him, but it depends how long a round takes in your dramatic task. Shaken is basically a condition for combat rounds. So if your dramatic task takes place in the same timeline as a combat, so around 10 seconds or so, then yeah, if you're shaken, you need to recover. Otherwise, you can't go on. But some dramatic tasks can be 1 minute for each round. Some of them could be 1 hour between each time. Like defusing a bomb could be a bit longer. A ritual could be an hour per round if it takes that long. So in that case, shaken is irrelevant because it takes place outside the timeline of a combat.
So in regards to that then, Eric, how would you combine the two? So if you were trying to disarm a bomb and it takes considerably longer than a 10-second combat turn, but you're doing it while there's combat around, so as in the other characters are trying to stop the terrorists from getting to you, how do you do that? How do you run? Do you then have to? Does your dramatic task then take 50 rounds?
No.
No, I would just level it up with everybody else at the same time. It's just too complicated to keep two different set of timelines in a combat. Unless they're at different places, then that can work. I guess it's a matter of how you want to run your game. I wouldn't run a 50 rounds dramatic task. I wouldn't run a 50 rounds combat. Usually when it goes beyond 12 rounds, to me that's way too long for combat. So
wow,
in Savage Worlds anyway.
You ain't ever played no D&D 5e. Just saying.
Well, maybe that's why I don't play it.
I kind of phased out there for a bit, but if you're doing a dramatic task, let's say you got to pick this lock, and that lock pick, the giant ogre's coming down the hallway, you roll up on a door, the door needs to be opened in order for you to get away from this, maybe say this dragon, let's make it a little bit more imposing or something like that. And so you've got your 4 or 5 players out fighting the dragon at the end of the hallway while you're trying to pick this lock, and the lock is the dramatic task. 5 rounds, I could do that because it's each action for a dramatic task. So you got 5 rounds to fight the dragon while the other guy's got to pick the door. And then I would actually probably even roll it without doing the go all 5 rounds. And if you picked it in 1 or 2, you could stand up and yell, let's run. It's time to hightail it out of here. But just, each the person picking the lock or whatever in that situation would be the guy that gets the action card. Anytime his init is drawn, he acts on that card. It does also say that he gets the quick edge.
I'm going to need another episode on dramatic tasks, because I believe last time we talked about dramatic tasks, I got taken the task for using unlocking something as a dramatic task.
Well, see, that's because you didn't add the dragon baking the friggin' cake, man.
Dude, I had zombie Arctic foxes.
That's not scary.
Well, we also said that it depends what happens if they fail. If you just said that now they can't get to the weapons, and then they can try it again, it's not very dramatic. But it depends how you present it. If you say if you don't open that lock right now to get the weapons, you're going to get swarmed by and taken away. So that's fine. That works fine for me. That's how I would run it too. So,
all right. So, dramatic tasks next episode.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the news. The news is incoming. Prepare yourself for the news. News. And some announcements about the Nerds International Network and the Wild Die Podcast.
So, all right, a little bit of news here. We've got NivCon coming up. What is NivCon? It's the Nerds International Virtual Convention, where we run some games, and people come and run games for a whole weekend, and this is September 15th and 16th. It's totally free. It's going to take place on Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, probably a little bit of Tabletop Simulator too, play RPGs, card games, board games, all of that stuff. There's already a bunch of events in there, and we'll post I'll post a link to it again. Come join us and play some games with us online. There's a variety of games, some Savage Worlds, some Genesis, some D&D 5e. There's a bunch of games being run on there. So looking forward to meet you there. And also another convention. This is our annual meet and greet of the Nerds International. So this show will have Gary, Harrison, and I will be in Richfield, Ohio, November 8th through 11th. So it's a whole 4 days of gaming. So a reminder, if you're in the area, or maybe you're not in the area, but you should really make the trip and come play some games with us in person. I'll give you free Wild Eye dice if I see you. If you come see me, I'll reach down in my bag and hand out the dice.
Yeah, you hear that, Eli? I know you're going to be close. Con, mister. Just saying.
Yep. And also, while that dramatic cake episode, I mentioned that there were a bunch of nominees, Savage Rules nominees for the ENnie Awards, and that actually took place a couple days ago while we were recording on Sunday mornings, and the award ceremony was on Friday night. And I forgot to mention that actually Andy Hopp with some Lowlife products, he's got a supplement there. He had 2 nominations, and he was also the host of the show, the host of the Oscars, Andy Hopp.
So is that a new thing? Because, I mean, I've known of the ENnies for quite a few years. Have they always done a show, or is this the first year they actually did a show with a host, maybe because of Twitch? You know what I mean? Maybe they streamed it and stuff like that? Like, I don't know.
I think this is the first year it was streamed live. Usually they just gave the announced the winners on Twitter or something like that. But the show's been... the awards ceremony has been going on for years. It's just this year it was actually streamed on Twitch.
Yeah, I saw a picture of Andy doing a hosting thing with the screen, and that's why I was asking. I wasn't aware if they were doing it. I thought it was just like I explained it, like it was just they gave away the awards. You know, you found out online kind of a thing. And then I saw this picture of Andy, and I'm like, oh, they streamed the whole thing. I missed it. I wish I would have known. I actually even went to the website and voted a couple of times for Richard Wilcock because he's the man, not Andy. Sorry, suck it. I'll see you in November.
A couple times you cheated? Is that what you're saying?
No, I went to the website a couple of times. I only voted once because I'm Honest Joe.
Right. So anyway, it turns out that there was a Savage Rules winner, and that was Saga of the Goblin Horde, a silver ENnie for best free game by Zadmar Games, our friend Richard Wilcock. So congratulations to Richard. He was the only Savage Rules winner.
Yeah, soon to be new host of the show next, maybe.
Yeah.
Paris just looks at me like, what? No, congratulations, man. That's awesome. Well deserved, dude. You did a spectacular job with your product. Saga of the Goblin Horde is bloody balls out amazing. It's so good. I don't know. Yeah. I'm curious to know what won, because if it beat Saga of the Goblin Horde, it's got to be like, you know what I mean? Maybe the book that won is a pop-up book, because that's the only way that it's going to get any better. You open it up and little things pop up at you, maybe scare you a little bit.
Well, the thing with the awards is that the nominations come from the judges and the winners come from popular voting. So Savage Rules is still a small community in the grand scheme of things. So I think it's quite an accomplishment to, first be nominated and then win silver. Was High Plains Samurai that won gold. I don't know what it is. I know Todd Crapper is kind of famous designer. So
who?
Maybe the Todd Crapper. Yeah. No jokes. We don't make jokes about people's names on this show anymore, Gary. We can't do that.
What do you mean anymore? Did we ever?
Yes,
did we? Oh. I would just like to apologize for my non-professional conduct in previous episodes.
That's not genuine.
I'm trying to turn over a new leaf. Sorry, Todd Crapper.
Okay.
The game that got best free game gold over Saga of the Goblin Hordes was High Plains Samurai Legends by Broken Ruler Games.
Oh, I'm going to have to check that out. Let's see how good this is. I'll be the judge of you, game, whatever your name is. High Plains something or other.
Listening to the Wild Die Podcast. You're listening to the Wild Die Podcast. You're listening to the Wild Die Podcast. You're listening to the Wild Die Podcast. Listen 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 to the Wild Die Podcast.
We're taking it to the edge with a discussion on, well, it's called Make a Pitch. So I've got a friend, big Savage Worlds fan, but wants to run games in his area. But there's the big elephant in the room, right? It's all D&D and Pathfinder, and it's hard to get people excited about anything other than that. So how do you go about that if you want to run your favorite game, but everybody else is, Savage Worlds, I don't know what that is. I want D&D because Critical Role is on the internet, and that's the cool thing to do, right? And so I want to ask you guys, because you each come from, well, different backgrounds, in the sense that we've got Paris that's actually doing this professionally. It's his job now to run games, and he's probably had to sit in a meeting with his boss and say, listen, boss, this is what I want to run, and he needs to be approved, actually get approved to run whatever he wants to run. So he's got to make it all business-like and probably professional and classy. And then you've got Gary.
What?
Full stop.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. Well, Gary's different because it's Nerd Haven is his local game store, and probably dominated by D&D 5e there too. And now, actually, he just announced to us earlier this week that, well, he's all excited. Later today, he's going to a store to run 50 Fathoms. Mm-hmm. How about that? Big round of applause to Gary. Let's get excited.
I gotta tell you, my nipples got a little hard just at the words being spoken from another man's mouth. That sounded wrong, but yeah, man, we're doing it today. I'm super excited. I gotta say, though, Fantasy Grounds, the latest update, I'm having some issues. My old modules, for some reason, some of them aren't loading up. So, like, Maiden Voyage is a module that I created with my own special maps, my own tokens, my own encounters, and all that other stuff, so that I can play it on Fantasy Grounds and portray the maps on my big screen TV. I go to load the module up, and it pops up and says 50 Fathoms, GM's Guide, module not loaded. Do you want to try again or something? And I'm like, what? Anyways, I spent 8 hours yesterday prepping. All day I was upstairs or downstairs in my little dungeon, building my maps and my adventures and my encounters. And that just reinforced my screw you players. You're woo-woo. The whole time I had train music going in the background. Just saying.
No, that's just reinforced my let's go old school. So you don't have to do that twice.
Yes.
Huh? Just open the book and run the freaking game. Don't have to prepare 8 hours of stuff just to be able to run it.
You know who's having a really good game? This guy's players.
Yeah, we'll hear about it next episode.
Now I feel the pressure, and if it tanks, I'm going to blame you.
Well, at least you didn't find out at the game that didn't work.
Oh, that would have stank. That would have stank.
So yeah, I mean, we've got Gary that had to convince a bunch of people that I think they were just playing D&D 5e, and GM needed a break, and he just slipped in there and say, hey, this is what we're going to run. So maybe you had to punch a few faces and kick a few people out, but we'll find out how you make a pitch, how you make sure that you get people excited about playing a Savage Worlds game.
Really? There was no excitement going on, dude. The GM basically texted us in our Facebook Messenger chat, and he's like, man, I need a break. So he's like, he was done. And I'm like, hey guys, I'll do this. This is what I'm willing to do. I was going to run sci-fi or fantasy ICRPG, or I was going to do 50 Fathoms or possibly Deadlands because they're my favorite settings. And we just discussed it in chat, and I slid in like a dirty old snake. I just rolled right in there. Yeah, it was super easy. I was actually kind of impressive. Hey, speaking of which, Paris, you should present your boss with the dramatic cake task. See how that goes over.
Yeah. Good
See
call.
if you can slide that by him.
That's a great idea, Gary. I'll get right on that.
I don't feel like it is a great idea. I feel like you're just trying to say that to appease me.
So, Gary, did these people, while you've ran 50 Fathoms at that store before, but it was with your son and his friends, so did they know anything about 50 Fathoms when you pitched the idea to them?
The new group? No. I just told them these are the settings. Let's pick a setting, a genre, whatever you want to call it. We can do cowboys, we can do pirates, space, like sci-fi, or just stick with fantasy if that's what they wanted to do. But I was not running 5e. Like, it's not that I don't like 5e. I'm a massive fan. I buy all the books. I buy all the stuff. But I'm in the process of dumbing my games down, which is why I can't go to overly complicated games. I can't, for some reason, I feel personally that I can't go backwards. Like, I'll play in those games if they're like if somebody, I was just doing it. If somebody throws down a 5e game, I'll gladly play in it, but I'm not running it. I don't need to make my life overly complicated. I spent 8 hours fricking around in Fantasy Grounds. But to me, that's fun.
Complicated at all, huh?
It's fun. That stuff is fun. You've probably spent 8 hours crafting your minis or painting your stuff or doing your things, right?
I've spent way beyond that amount of time right now, but that's just for a special one-shot game. Yeah. So you just told them it's pirates. Have they ever played Savage Worlds? Do they know the system?
Wesley played in a game that you're probably familiar with called Don't Drink the Water. It's a Deadlands game, and he actually came up with a really cool character. Now, Wesley, understandably, does not like Savage Worlds for the reason that I'm about to tell you. He made a luchador. So he was a Mexican wrestler in a game with guns. So when we got to the end boss, he would basically on the map in Fantasy Grounds, because we were playing it online with some friends, his luchador character would be running it like one of the zombies at near the end or whatever, and then that would be it. He'd move his space. His turn was over. He didn't have any ranged attacks or anything because he was going to go strap wrestling moves on everybody. And then somebody else would shoot the one that he was running at and kill it. So he'd have to turn and run a different direction, and he would only make it so far because they were more than 6 plus whatever, the run is away. He'd turn and run at that one. Somebody would shoot it and kill it. And this went on for... I can
see how that's frustrating. Yeah.
Basically, all he did was run around the map like a retard while people just blasted stuff with a gun. So, kind of my fault. I should have actually given him some sort of magical powers or some ranged abilities to enhance. Maybe he's like a magic casting wrestler or something. Anyways, so he's the only one. Maybe Brittany does too. I don't remember if Brittany's played any Savage Worlds with me. But, he would have the most experience, and at that, a bad experience. Just saying.
So basically, like you said, it was easy. You didn't have to convince them, explain anything more. You just said it's pirates, let's play this, and they just said, yeah.
That's what I did. Yes, and you know what? Like this is going to be session 1.
So
we're
that's boring.
Suck it. After today, I will be super helpful because we're going to do like a whole first session. Sit down. We're going to do character creation. Of course, I'm going to have to explain the rules because a lot of them don't even know what's going on. And I'm hoping that they'll come in with it with like a clean attitude, so to speak, because a lot of times once somebody is invested in something, it's really hard to pull them out of it. So, and I know that from experience. Like my last Savage Worlds game, I literally told when I was doing Adventure League, I told my group, I'm done with D&D. I'm going to start a game in Savage Worlds. I don't remember what the first one was that I played. Oh, it was my Starsky and Hutch game. My first Savage GMing at my Nerd Haven, and I literally had to sever my entire 5th edition group because they didn't want to come over. They broke off and did their own thing, and I got my son and his friends to come and play. So it's not easy to do, I tell you that much, man. 5th edition has dug into people's brains.
All right, well, let's move on to Paris then. Maybe we'll get back to you, Gary, and a little bit more insight, or like you said, next episode, maybe you'll have more to say about this. But so you're pitching these ideas, Paris, to people that probably never played any RPGs, right?
So in terms of my path to how the program came about, I was actually pitching to the participants well before I was pitching to my bosses, because I was given a group of young people, a social group to run, and when I arrived there and saw how it had been run before, and it really wasn't very social, it was just a whole bunch of guys and girls looking at their own tablets and phones, etc. So role-playing for me was the icebreaker. I actually started by asking, had anyone played D&D? And the guys around me had heard of Dungeons & Dragons, but had never actually played it. So I was lucky enough in the sense I could have played D&D, but I was already pretty heavily invested in Savage Worlds because I was playing it online with my friends from around the country. And the reason that we originally chose Savage Worlds was the same reason it's been so successful for me in what I've been doing. And that is that instead of trying to learn a new set of rules every time we wanted to play a new genre, we could lay down the same set of rules, put a different trapping on it, tweak a few edges, hindrances, and we were good to go. We could just then go play something else. Happy days. So when I introduced it to the guys, Savage Worlds actually helped me learn how to make this program better through the elements of the program of the RPG itself. So things like the bennies, the cards, the edges, the hindrances. A lot of those elements helped me get the kids to open up, get the guys to open up a bit more and actually play the game. Like, it was pretty daunting. If you can imagine, if you've never played any sort of tabletop role-playing game before, but worse still, you've never really done anything in a group of other people because you've got high anxiety or whatever challenges that you face that makes it difficult for you to communicate with people, it's very daunting. And I think at that stage, if I'd have pulled out D&D 5e, which I do know and I have played, I think that would have been just a little too much. There was a D&D character sheet there's a lot more in a D&D character sheet to a Savage World character sheet. You can make a Savage Worlds character just a couple of lines and play the game.
So did you start by telling them, while showing them a bunch of settings, getting them interested in some settings, or you talked more about the mechanics, like, hey, look, in this game you deal cards, and when you get the Joker, something exciting happens, and when you roll the dice, they explode, that type of thing? Was it more mechanics or more the flavor and settings?
No, that part didn't come. That part didn't come till probably closer to when I was actually working it out to be a proper program that I would then present to my bosses. It was really about the ability to just start a game instantly, and it was intuitive enough that you could just go. You could just roll with it. Everyone was handed a character that I'd made, a fantasy character, and showed them how Wild Die worked. And once we'd gone through that, that's it. We could just play. So that, in terms of the mechanics, got out of the way of the story. But as I did some more research and I actually had to sit down and work out a program and how it worked and how it progressed social interaction and how it built social skills, I then had to take that to my bosses and say, well, this is the reason that I use this particular role-playing game, which is Savage Worlds. And I just want to point out, I can use any role-playing game. The benefits of any role-playing game out there are the same. You know, the social interaction, the working out problems, and you can do that with D&D. You can do it with Traveller. You can do it with GURPS. You can do it with Pathfinder. D&D actually isn't the biggest here in Australia, at least not in my region. Pathfinder is the biggest here, which is D&D 3.75 technically, but everyone loves Pathfinder. But what I had to go to my bosses with, because if I went to my bosses and say, look, I can do a 2-hour program, but it's going to take me 8 hours of prep, right? They're not going to pay me 8 hours to do 2 hours of work, if that makes sense. So one of the beauties of Savage Worlds is that I can do a lot of it on the fly, and it doesn't matter what genre, because a lot of the elements in terms of mechanically are the same. So
unless you're Gary, then you need to prep 8 hours for.
That's fantasy grounds. That's not Savage Worlds, right?
Dare you, Mister? Sounds to me like you're not making much of a pitch either, Paris. Thanks for coming out. Let's go to Eric now. How do you convince people to join your Savage Worlds game? Oh, wait a second. You don't have any friends, so let's go back to Paris.
Well done.
So
let keep going, Paris.
Yeah. Look, when I pitched role-playing games to the kids originally, right? It wasn't Savage World specifically. It was just the whole art of playing the game and what that game could deliver. And so as they learnt it, and I learnt more from watching them play at how Savage Worlds was better for this. Why are we laughing?
Gary telling me I have no friends. Sorry.
They say the truth hurts, but you're laughing. I don't know.
Yeah. So the reason that I didn't go to my bosses with Dungeons and Dragons, which I could have, because out of all the games a lot of these guys would have heard of, Dungeons and Dragons would have been it. It's the easiest to make people kind of understand what we do. Is if you just say, well, we play a game like Dungeons and Dragons. But when I went to them and said, look, I can show people how to run this game very quickly. I can show people that it's not just one genre. So we can, if we have a group of kids and they all think that sword and sorcery sucks and they want to play a sci-fi game, it doesn't take us a week to turn that around. We could do it within a matter of minutes if we had to. And Savage Worlds lends itself to genres that they're very, if you're going to get them in their own system, they're very indie. So things like ETU and Rippers and settings that off the bat I wouldn't have thought would have been appropriate, or appropriate's not the right word, but then not what I thought the kids would gravitate to, right? Mm-hmm. Especially with ETU, and that has turned out to be one of the superstars of our sessions. The pitch, I guess I pitch more to GMs than I do to the players when it comes to Savage Worlds, because when I bring people into my programs, I have to teach them how to play, as in other facilitators, and the kids just want to have a game. Like the beauty, like I think if we sort of loaded them up with a lot of rules, we would have lost them in the beginning. But they just want to play and explore and have that degree of randomness, but doesn't require 47 tables and checking percentile dice and whether my sword suddenly gets a crack in it and now there's an issue, and on and on and on, that some other games have. So it's limitless imagination, unlimited genres, ease of play, fast turnaround on prep, and the ability to adapt on the fly as long as you've got the core understanding of what the Savage Worlds rules are. And it is fast, furious, and fun. That's my pitch.
So basically what you're saying, well, for it to be helpful to other people is basically the players, your kids that you're taking care of, mm-hmm. They just trust you. They trusted you to make the best choice for them, basically. They were just going to, go in and play whatever you were going to run. Trust
is there's a certain degree of trust that has to be built up with these guys or with these youth so that they will just interact with you, let alone present a game to them. But Savage Worlds, I think also because Savage Worlds, they have a lot of agency over. We use the word agency a lot. So the use of bennies, which allows them to re-roll, I think that appeals quite a bit where some other games don't. But because we also locked in that double ones is a failure, and then we've explored that failure component, we get a balance there. So they can still feel like superstars most of the time, but they still have to deal with those problems that you can't run away from, or you can't ignore, or you can't change. And I think with other systems where your character roles are very defined, you're the tank, you're the healer, you're the mage, you're the archer, or you're the pilot, and you can't do anything else, and you're the Jedi and you can't do anything else. That's the sort of where a lot of those games run along those lines. Within Savage Worlds, a participant can come to me and say, I want to be the mechanic that is also a scientist. I want to be an investigator that's also a world-class singer. And they can come up with 100 different ideas, and I don't have to go, well, there's actually nothing for that in the rules. It's all just, yep, we can do that. Yep. Yes, you might have to wait a couple of advancements to get all the things you just asked for, but yep, all doable. We can do that. And the ability for them to have that freedom is fantastic.
Oh, that's good, because I would think that it's easier for people to just pick a class or, profession, and then, it's a choice paralysis. What am I going to play? I don't know if I can play anything. I don't know. But if you give me 20 choices, I can pick one. So it's interesting that for you, your players actually, they come up with their own concepts.
Well, it depends on, like, as I said, the program has evolved quite a bit. So from the initial just a socialization thing, now we have what we call levels of programs. And as people progress, so in our initial social groups, I probably will create the characters just so they can get straight in and play, and there's not that analysis paralysis. But once they've been with us for a little while and they go into that sort of level 1, then they start making their own characters, and they make their own decisions about what genre they want to play or what setting. And then we go from there. And then the level 2 is we then get a couple of guys and we teach them to be GMs, right? And so one of the other reasons we use Savage Worlds in that instance is because I got guys that want to try and play Vampire the Masquerade or Call of Cthulhu because they love that genre. But for them to take those rule sets and then use it in the same environment that we play in, it's too much work, right? These guys need something that they can, here's a core set of rules, let your imagination flow, you can run with it on the fly. There's not just buckets of tables and mountains of books that you have to get through. So Savage Worlds ticks all the boxes for that as well, because the last thing that you want is for someone that's going for their first GMing experience. And I think I've said this before, like, especially when you're dealing with people with that haven't got fully developed social skills or high functioning autism, they can be pretty blunt when it comes to how they feel. And I cop it all the time, and I'm actually very grateful for it. But if you're a new GM and you're copping flack while you're learning, especially on a complicated game, you'll never come back. So it has to be something that's very quick, very easy to bluff your way through in terms of, I'm just going to use this skill. I don't have to look up, oh my God, what do we do in a firefight or in a dog fight versus trying to disarm a nuclear bomb. It's very simple. But some games, there's specific skills, and then down this tree, and then you have this particular need, and if you don't have that tool, you're screwed, and on and on and on. And that can cause that can create a very negative experience especially for new gamers.
Good. Going back to Gary here. So let's say it wasn't that easy for you to pitch it to your group at Nerd Haven. Do you point out the competition flaws, or do you showcase Savage Worlds features? What I mean is, do you tell the group, well, in Savage Worlds you don't have to do that stupid thing like in D&D, or instead you just tell them that in Savage Worlds what's cool is, and then you talk about it? What's the best way you think?
You would definitely go that way. The last thing you want to do is point out the flaws in the system that they're playing. And the reason is, I had to mute myself there while I horked up a little bit. So the reason is, anytime somebody is invested in something, we've been experiencing this on the forums and stuff like that, but anytime you get anybody invested in something, be it politics, you want to talk about Trump, people that voted for Trump, you're not changing their minds. People that are religious, you're not changing their minds. Like, what happens when you try and compare your system to somebody else's system, or your view politically to somebody else's view politically, they do what's called doubling down. It's like a well-known thing in the psychological circles. They will backpedal, dig their heels in, and come at you like with their position in a stronger fashion. So the last thing I would ever say is compare your system to another system. So you might have an easier time telling people how good your system is for the reasons that it's good. You know, like in Savage Worlds, you can do multi-actions. You know, you can do more than just smack somebody. You can, you know, there's, your spells can be so much more vivid and you know, extravagant and stuff like that. But yeah, the last thing you want to do is compare systems, because you get people that'll double down. It'll turn into an argument. Before you know it, you're scrapping it out in the middle of the gaming store, beating up a sack of nerds that are like all trying to say how good 5e is. Maybe you could try some donuts. Donuts might be good.
Just to echo what Gary's saying there, I'm only aware of one bad role-playing game system in my entire life, and that was the one that measured the circumferences of sphincters and stuff. But every other...
What game's that?
Every other role-playing game has its place, and it has its audience. Some people want a game that's full of crunch, right? Some people want that very defined role. Some people want the major backdrop of like a Traveller universe, or whatever the case may be, whatever the system is. Yeah, the last thing you want to do is go, Savage Worlds is better than yours, or than this system, and then say because it does. That Savage Worlds is not better than any other system. It's better for me. It's better for the people that enjoy playing Savage Worlds, and we're really hoping that whoever comes in contact with Savage Worlds enjoys as much as we do. But yeah, role-playing games, any tabletop role-playing game is such, from my perspective, such a powerful and magical thing. Going, this one is better than that one is very counterproductive.
Mm-hmm. It will not get you well. I would say bring a box of donuts, man. Roll in there with some donuts, slide them. Yeah, bribe them. You know what? If you play in a local gaming store too, like I do, they all have signups, or not signups, but they'll have a schedule. Pick a time. Pick a place, roll into that, said store, throw it up there, and just kind of hang out. You'll get people that'll, they can hit you on different social media platforms. You could leave your Facebook profile up, or even something, just have them sign up at the store or something like that. That's a lot of what we do. Is people will roll in and they'll be like, I will run a game from 6 to 9 on Tuesday. I'm doing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and that's as far as they go. D&D 5e between 6 and 9, people sign up.
So what about presentation? What about like trailers or showing pictures? Do you think that can help?
I'm a little confused as to who I'm going to be showing these pictures to. There could be jail time involved depending on the picture, if it's about my presentation. I don't. Here's the thing: is I'm not understanding your premise. Like, when you let's take you for example. When you are going to post a game online, because I know a lot of what you do is online. You're very socially awkward, and you like to just hang out in dark rooms with blankets over your head and stuff. And like I said earlier, you don't have a lot of friends. So when you pitch a game, your games immediately fill up all the time. How do you pitch your games? You just basically, you do the presentation thing because you throw it up online. So I guess if I was to do that, I do the same thing too. for the cons and stuff like that. I'll get on the Facebooks and the Google Pluses and stuff like that, and I'll put up pictures and put a little blurb about what my game is going to be about for conventions and stuff like that. But I'm not doing any of that at the local gaming store. I will just basically roll in there and throw in, Savage Sundays, noon to 3. Show up
And
or
that
suck
works
it.
for you. That's easy like that. Well,
Yeah.
to me, like maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, that's when I really started gaming online, and I had to, build up a base of players, of people that would play with. And what I found worked for me was to share pictures. Like you, I would run it on Fancy Grounds. So I would take a screenshot of my table, my Fantasy Grounds table, because I would work out custom themes, and then pictures of the characters, the NPCs of the pre-gens, with a little blurb on what they're about, what they're doing. That guy crushes skulls and that type of thing, and then show these pictures. And that's what I mean by presentation, that people are very visual. If you tell them this game is awesome, come join it. For me, that didn't work. That's not enough. For people maybe that are, like you say, less socially awkward, that can actually convince people, strong arm people into joining something, that might be enough. To me, I had to make it more visual. And that's why right now I've been spending dozens of hours crafting stuff for a one-shot game at Con on the Cob, so that it's a visual experience. And then I can pitch that game later by showing pictures of, look, this game, I'm going to run, wise guys. Look at what I crafted with it. Look at all the miniatures that I use with it. And people are like, it's like watching Carl Kiesler post something online and see like everybody flock to it and say how amazing it looks. And I don't claim to have his level of talent. Of course not, but at least I'm making an effort.
You're not saying that on air, but off air, you're like Carl sucks compared to my Mac Daddy stuff, right? I've heard it.
Right. So that's what I mean by presentation. Like, you didn't have to show the cover to, not even the cover of the 50 Fathoms book to that group. You just said pirates. It's fun.
Yeah, but
your passion that contagious that you didn't need to work that hard.
How creepy of a dude do you think someone's got to be to stand in front of another group and hold up a 50 Fathoms book and say, "Let's play pirates"? That's just freaking weird, dude.
Is it?
Just to jump
Go ahead,
in here,
Paris.
I think where I differ, like, because I don't use a lot of props and stuff anymore. Like, I use the bennies and I use the cards and the GM screen, but I don't. Other than that, it's pretty much all theater of the mind. The way that I pitch Savage Worlds, and I think this is what we're trying to talk about, is why Savage Worlds as opposed to another system, is when I pitch a game to someone, I don't pitch the rules. I don't say, play this because it's Savage Worlds. I say, come and have a go at this because we're going to go on this adventure. We're going to do something exciting. Whatever the genre is, I will ham up the genre. And the reason Savage Worlds works for me is because at the end of the game, I don't want them to remember that they were playing Savage Worlds. I want them to remember the adventure. And Savage Worlds is just the right balance where I've got the mechanics to tell my story, but it gets out of the way of the story. It doesn't bog the story down in rules. Does that make sense? Like, it's about flow. It's about continuing the story, having everyone engaged, not having those moments where people are sitting there waiting for a rule to be looked up, or one guy's doing some complicated hack, so everyone else has to sit down and wait while this person is doing 57 rolls, etc., etc. When I pitch a game of excitement and adventure, or I pitch a game of mystery and intrigue, or I pitch a game of horror. I don't talk about the rules. And then when we play, I show them that Savage Worlds is perfect for this because it barely comes up in terms of the rules themselves.
All right, so let's pretend here that I'm a socially awkward teenager and Gary's a
We don't have to
teenager
pretend.
bully. It won't be that hard, right? And we're on our phones right now, and we're just, doing what teenagers do, and we're not interested in what you're saying right now, and you want us to play a game with you of Savage Worlds. What do you say?
I guess the scenario is a bit hard because these guys are actually quite desperate to have a social interaction. And because their world is pop culture and computer games, they want to interact with it in any way that they can. And what I'm showing them, or what I present to them, is a way to interact with the themes and stories that they play in an electronic format, but I give them more control. The world responds to what they decide. It's not set on rails like a choo-choo train, and it's not like pre-coded. That it's a sandbox, but it's a lot more than that, because if they don't want to play that sandbox anymore, they can jump in the next sandbox.
Okay, but
Hey.
boring. What do you think, Gary? You're not interested, right?
Hey,
Yeah, but
socially
I wouldn't pitch it to you like that.
socially
If
awkward.
you were clients, it's not. First of all, I have a conversation about what your favorite games are, whether you like comic books, what your favorite movies are, and then as I
Now you're talking.
progressed. Yeah, as I progressed and got to understand more about you, I don't just walk in and go, "We're playing games now. Hi, who are you? I'm Paris. I'm here. We're playing games. Sit." That doesn't happen, right? There's a qualifying period, and there's a period of getting people comfortable with the table and comfortable with the game and comfortable with the concept. It was harder right at the start for me because I had completely cold people, but these guys were eager to play a game. They were eager to try something new, and I was fortunate enough that all the ducks fell in a row, and these guys gravitated to role playing. If I'd had people that were negative to it, it might have been a bit different. I've had players. The reason that we've expanded our program to include board games and now video games is because some people just aren't ready for role playing. They're like my gateways now, especially video games. Whereas because there are so many more participants out there that love video games, we can get them in on this, and then we can show them that video games will only take them so far. But if they come across to the table and see what the rest of the other guys are doing, and if they fall in love with that, we can take them on a fantabulous journey. So it's not as simple as me going, "Hey, look, Savage World, here's a rule book." All right. So my first group, it was, here's a fantasy adventure. Did you enjoy that? Yes, because it was a short introduction. Would you like to play another fantasy adventure, or would you like to try something different? And then I gave them a couple of examples. So it'd be like Rippers and I can't remember. It was about three different. I only gave them three to choose from. So they picked Rippers. So we played Rippers. And then once we did Rippers for a while, then I showed them 5 settings, and they picked ETU out of that. And the beauty was, because of Savage Worlds and because it was the same mechanics, because I wasn't burdening them with another rule set that they had to learn, they progressed faster and faster and were able to slip into each game.
Hey, socially awkward teenage guy. This guy talks too much. Let's ditch this dump and go get high.
Yeah. Let's go bake a cake. So I see a difference a little bit here, I think, and I might be wrong, between Paris and Gary, is that Paris actually is pitching a setting or something that really might appeal to them, because he sort of inquired first what they were into with pop culture and all that, and that worked that way, while Gary basically is passionate about 50 Fathoms, obviously, and Deadlands. He likes those, and ICRPG. And so you pitched what you were really passionate about. And do you think your passion was contagious? Is that why it worked, do you think?
Well, it's definitely going to make me show up at the gaming store to DM. You guys want to run Barbies? Yeah, I'll see you Sunday. 11:45 would be like, I'm a little under the weather right now. Maybe next week.
I don't think Gary and I are pitching anything different, to be honest. We're both pitching. We're both pitching a game a social interactive game. Do you want to come and join in? Do you want to have a go? That's what we're pitching. Now, the point that Gary is making, that he has to enjoy the setting that he's presenting as the GM, and I'm 120% behind him on that. I struggled, and I think I've told you, Eric, I've struggled with the fantasy genre a lot lately because I'm just over it. Like I've done it so much now that I'm feeling I'm not providing a good game. Like
so
I'm
do you
providing.
still pitch it? Do you still pitch fantasy games even though you're kind of jaded with them?
No, because the other thing that I do in these programs is, and again, it comes down to the level of the participant where they're at. Is right now I'm in the process of developing a sci-fi rescue / law enforcement game called Savage Heroes ES, and so I've told these guys, I said, look, we are going to wrap up this fantasy game before we move into our new premises. And when we get to the new premises, we're playing this sci-fi game, right? And so some of them are like, but I still want to shoot goblins in the head with my arrows. They don't say it quite like that, but you get the gist, right? And I'm like, but just try it. Just give it a crack. Right, see what you think. And the thing is, the amount of times I've pitched a setting and they've gone, that sounds crap, but they've come and played it, and then I can't get them to stop playing that setting to go to the next one. I mean, that happens all the time, right? I think Savage Worlds is successful in this particular instance because I'm passionate about Savage Worlds and I'm passionate about the games that I play. If I was as passionate about D&D 5e, I think I could do exactly the same job with it. I'd probably have to modify it a lot more. One of the beauties about Savage Worlds is I don't have to modify it. A lot of the research that I've done, especially where people have used Dungeons and Dragons to do similar things, is they've had to modify Dungeons and Dragons to suit that skills building therapeutic role. I haven't had to do that with Savage Worlds in terms of the rules at all.
You know what I find ironic?
Say again?
I said, you know what I find ironic is that people come to you to get therapy and play games. Usually people need therapy when they leave my games.
Yeah, it's a good point.
The funniest thing for me is when I go back to meetings and I'm describing to my co-workers and my bosses like what we've done, and I'm trying to give examples of how we learned something new in the game, or how a participant has learned something, and I'm sitting there talking about, oh yeah, and they decided to shoot the vampire in the head, or they decided to execute this demon, and they're all just looking at me horrified, like, what are you talking about in these games with these kids, right? So I actually spend more time explaining the mechanics of the game and how the games work to the people I work with, right? And in terms of getting them to buy into the concept of why a role-playing game or why a tabletop game is so powerful in our field, than I do to the kids. The kids couldn't give two stuffs about the rules. All they want is to be that hero. They want to be the guy that saves the damsel or guy in distress. They want to be the one that gets off the exploding spaceship. They want to be the one that vanquishes the dragon. They don't care about the rules. But in terms of this podcast, and why would I pitch Savage Worlds? I pitch Savage Worlds because I can provide all of that with minimal prep. I can provide all of that without having to burden myself with a ton of just bureaucracy. It's probably the best way I can put it, right? I went to do a D&D 5e game, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to put a magic user in this game. What spells has he got? What do I do? And I had to go and create a mage. In Savage Worlds, I just go dice, bang, bang, bang. I know what it is. I know what it does. I use bolt. I just give it a different trapping. I use entangle. I give it a different trapping. That's why Savage Worlds.
Good.
Good. Good. That's all you gotta say? That's it? Wow.
Yeah, like I said, socially awkward. So
Sum it up.
Good.
Wrap it up.
Well,
sum it up. If you're gonna do it online, I would say do it like Eric does, man. Get your pictures, show your stuff, get your presentation out, write your little sub story, explain what you're doing. That's how I roll online. When I'm at my gaming store, Sunday noon to 3, Savage Worlds. that's, if you're interested, that's where you'll find me. And then it's just a matter of, sometimes there's been times when I've gone to the store at Sunday at noon and nobody's been there. I cried a little.
Yeah.
You know.
But you've got a sweet setup. Don't you think that's like a selling point for you to say, hey, come play this game? I've got the 50-inch TV on there. I'm going to display maps and look at the little paper minis I've got, and I've got a themed deck and all that. That you don't use that as a selling point for your game?
No. See, I just that's how I keep them. That's not how I get them.
Yeah. I think that's cooler for us. Like when you told me that that's what Gary does, I'm like, my mind went immediately to, holy crap, how do I replicate that? That is the best thing I've ever heard. But when it comes to our players, right? So I guess the majority of the people listening to this podcast are GMs, right? So a lot of the GM stuff, they're all hanging on there. They want that information, but a player doesn't give a crap. They don't care how much work we've done or what we've painted and how many hours we've sweated to get this done. All they care about is their character, how it's a really cool, and it gets to do all these amazing things, and they have a fun time. That's all they care about, and that's all I pitch.
So you're saying that, let's say we're walking down the hall at a convention, there's two tables. There's a table with a guy with a stack of papers that say, come on in, we're going to go on a crazy adventure. And then on the other table, you've got Carl Kiesler with all this sweet setup. You don't think people are going to gravitate to Carl Kiesler's table first?
I have a question. Is there school lockers in this hallway? Because this is going to determine how far you make it down this hallway with me.
You gotta lock me in the locker.
From my experience, Eric, Carl Kiesler's stuff is awesome. And for the majority of players that go to a convention who are expecting to play these games and know what they are, Carl has taken his art to the next level, right? For a new person, Carl's stuff, or something that's that well prepared and shows to be that polished, can actually be quite daunting. It can be quite, they might think that they're up for that.
Intimidating.
Yeah, intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Right. So in a convention, Carl has to make himself stand out from the crowd, right? Because everyone's doing what Carl's doing, but Carl has taken it to the next level, to the point that even me here at the arse end of Australia, I know Carl. I've seen what he's done. I've never been to one of his games, but by God, if I could ever get to a convention and get in on a Carl Kiesler game, man, sign me up, right? I'll give my firstborn son for it. And he doesn't know that yet, but if you need him, it's there, right? But if I go to my guys here, or if I'm introducing role-playing to new people and I start pulling out jackets and like all the stuff that he has, I haven't told them what the game is yet. I've just dumped a whole bunch of stuff in front of them, and they've gone, that's too much. It's too much. I actually have to go. It has to be more basic from my perspective with the new player. It has to be. It's a gradual ease in. It might be just holding the Benny monster for that first session. It's just get your head around what a role playing game is. We're telling a collective story. Your character is one of the central stars. You get to control it. You get to say what he, she thinks, does, acts. I respond to what you give me. Nothing you do is right or wrong. It just is, right? And the story progresses, and it's your story. You help build it. That's it. That's our big pitch, And I've made it more mechanical in terms of the way that I'm presenting it to you. And it'll depend on the guy or girl that I'm speaking to. If I'm too excited, I can actually drive them away from that. Right? I have to gauge my audience.
You got to keep your pants
I'm
on.
in a different boat than people that have walked into a gaming store.
So has anybody actually ever played a game with Carl Kiesler? Because I know I haven't. One day I'm hoping, that's on my bucket list. But maybe Carl's presentation is really good because he's a shitty DM. Send your hate mail to Eric Lamoureux at the Wild Eye. Right? Maybe he's compensating for something like small dudes that drive big trucks. Just saying. Maybe the guy that just sits down, right? There's the guy with the pen and the paper that sits there, and he's got his little Savage World icon sitting there, and Carl Kiesler's got his little magical playground. But the dude with just a piece of paper, maybe that guy's really swinging something, whereas Carl's just a tiny guy in a big boat.
I don't know. I've never played in one of his games, but I heard he's quite a good GM.
Don't
Pretty
lie.
Great GM, actually.
You don't have to kiss Carl's butt.
Hey, I'm just saying. Facts.
Send hate mail to Eric Lamoureux at the Wild Eye.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right,
All
well,
right, let's wrap this up, guys.
I've had enough of you, Lamoureux. Let's finish this off.
Yo, motherfuckers, you all best back up. I always got a gun, I always come strap up. This ain't a game of pool, it ain't no time for no rack up. It's the motherfucking time for the motherfucking wrap up. What I'm trying to say is it's time for the wrap up. Yeah, this one goes out to all the ladies and all the men out there. Everyone in the front row, grease up. Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
that was an interesting conversation. I'm glad we had it. I hope it was useful to some people that want to get people the game. Not sure it was, but we'll see.
Stop moving your mic. What are you doing? All you hear is boom. And I hope that was useful.
Oh, I thought you were going on about the armpit hair.
No, it's your whole mic thing. When you moved it, it just was like reverberating. I think you
Really?
might
I was
start
trying
that
to be
over.
careful about with it. All right, guys. So I hope this conversation was kind of helpful. I mean, we got two sides of the coin there, Gary and Paris. I wanted to hear Harrison's take on it too, but screw him. Having lunch with his mom, so that's what happens.
I find
You
it.
can't ditch your mum.
Yeah, I mean, I could, but my mom's old and frail. What's she gonna do to me?
Mate, I don't care how old my mum gets. When it comes down to, am I going to upset Eric or am I going to upset my mother? And then I think about the consequences of upsetting either one of those people. Eric, you can suck it. Sorry.
Wow.
Fair enough. All right, so you can email us at thewildeye@gmail.com, and you can also find us on Google Plus, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We're everywhere. You can get this podcast, iTunes. Leave us a review. But yeah, Twitter at The Wild Eye. Otherwise, on Facebook and YouTube, Google Plus, it's under The Wild Eye Podcast. You can also find us on Nerds International. That's a community of podcasters and bloggers. We're all about RPGs and gaming, and you can also find some of our shows like Finding the Narrative, a Genesis podcast. There's the RPG Brewery by Jamie Pearson, where you get to learn about all kinds of RPGs, and there's some actual plays in there too. Gary's show, the Murder Hobo Show, about Savage Rifts, and also ICRPG and a bunch of weird stuff too that you probably don't want to watch when your mom's around. The Tabletop Twats, Harrison's podcast with James Clark and Nick Lambley. Again, another irreverent show from the UK that talks about RPGs and all that kind of stuff. And a lot more shows and blogs too. I'm not going to go through the whole list. Just go on there, check it out. Patreon. Actually, you can get some exclusive swag from us. I just sent out a bunch of Wild Eye podcast dice, some Wild Willies, to our patrons. So that's how you get that stuff. Certain reward levels. So come throw us $1 or more, depending on what you want from us. So and then Harrison will play that little jingle there.
Sean, Richard, Jason Connolly, J. Raz, Conrad, Erasmus, Neubert's Murder, Hobo Show, Rob, Tao, Alan Bray, Mr. Stag, Corey Dersham, Manuel Sams, Pure Mongrel, Dovia's RPG, Maps, CJ Stotts, Bubbles, Peter Adams, Digital Dungeon Master, Remy Billadoe, Gil Dashard, Lewin Scard, John Peterson. I think that's all of them. Thank you for your donations. Don't know why I sound so angry.
This is Eric saying, grab your sword by the balls.
This is Paris saying, Harrison, for God's sake, come back real quick. I can't contain these two anymore.
This is Gary saying, keep your pants on, keep it fun. Arr, thanks everyone, we're out.
The Wild Die Podcast is not affiliated with or endorsed by Pinnacle Entertainment Group or official Pinnacle licensees. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All music and artwork is used with permission of Pinnacle Entertainment Group. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Wild Die Podcast.